Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rhiannon and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in April. I can't quite believe it, guys, but I actually managed to read 12 books last month, which I believe is the most books that I've read in a month so far this year. Now I will say 6 of those were rereads, however the others weren't, and honestly having half of those as rereads and half of those as new reads is pretty good going. Now I will say I do have a full series here, a full set of books that I read by the same author. They were my main focus throughout the month, which is why I did manage to read so many books, but I will of course go into that in more depth as soon as I go into the books read and give you guys all of my thoughts. I once again consumed these stories in a range of different ways. I read an ebook, I also listened to some audiobooks, and I did of course read some books physically. And so without further ado, let's dive into the wrap up so that I can show you guys what I read. The first 9 books that I read are all part of the same series by Michelle Paver, and that is the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series. Now I will start off by focusing on the first 6 because these are ones that have been out for years. They are some of my all-time favourite books. This is actually the series that got me into reading. My English teacher at the time, who is now actually my boss, which is very strange, but she recommended these to me when I was in year 7, so I want to say I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was really enjoying reading in the classroom, and so she recommended these books to me, and I'm so glad she did because I fell in love with this series. I tend to reread them every year if I can, and of course I decided to do that again this year. Now the books in the series are as follows. We have Wolf Brother, which is book 1, Spirit Walker, which is book 2, Soul Eater, which is book 3, Outcast, which is book 4, Oathbreaker, which is book 5, and Ghost Hunter, which is the conclusion, or rather it would have been the conclusion had Michelle Paver not released 3 more books. So 4 years I did only have these 6 books in the series. I absolutely love them, and as I said, I reread them quite a bit. I've actually had to repurchase a few of these books because mine was so battered just because of how much I read them, but yeah, I absolutely love these. It's a series that I treasure with my whole heart. Now this is a middle grade series, however I would not let that put you off if it would in any way, because the premise, the characters, the setting is so different and unique. It's just going to draw you in and keep you absolutely hooked. In this one we are set thousands of years ago. It's almost prehistoric actually, and we are set in a forest for the majority of the series. Its people are hunters. They know every tree and root that they can find in the forest, and they know how to survive in a time filled with powerful magic. That is until one mage decides to conjure up a demon and trap it in the body of a bear. This bear is of course now determined to destroy everything in its path and bring absolute destruction to the world, and that is where our main character Toruk is introduced. Of course this all happens in book 1. The series develops as you move further along in this series, but as I said, we follow Toruk in this book, and at the start of this novel his father is actually attacked and killed by this demon bear. With his dying breath, Toruk's father actually tells him of a burden that is now his, and that is the fact that he is the one who has to destroy this demon bear by travelling to the mountain of the world spirit and asking it to destroy it. Of course, Toruk is feeling so many different emotions right now. His father is dying in front of him, the demon bear is still loose and is set to come upon them once again, and reluctantly Toruk does have to leave his father behind. Now him and his father have kept separate from all the other clans in this world for some reasons that come to light later on in the series, and so this is Toruk's first time actually being alone. He doesn't know what to do, he doesn't quite know how to go on without his father. That is until he stumbles upon a den of wolves that have unfortunately drowned and finds one wolf pup there that is still alive, and this wolf pup won't leave him alone. He doesn't understand what happened to his pack, and so he does kind of latch on to Toruk, whom he calls Tall Talus, which I just think is so adorable, and this pair then form a very unlikely bond, and it turns out that Wolf is actually going to be Toruk's guide in order to get to the mountain of the world spirit. Now of course it's not as simple as that. Theirs is a terrifying quest in a world of wolves, hunters, tree spirits, and hidden people, and it's also a world where trusting someone could put your life in danger. And so we see Torek and Wolf as they have to navigate their way in this world whilst facing many different threats and also finding a very unlikely companion who is a girl called Ren. That's all I'm going to say for this one. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil anything, but if you couldn't tell, I absolutely love this series. I feel like Wolf Brother is such a good introduction to this series. However, the rest of the books are phenomenal. I do want to say I feel like my favourite is the second book, which is called Spirit Walker. I don't know why. I think it's because we're set at a beach or a kind of island setting and we have orcas there, and I just really love the whole setting of the book and also the characters that we are introduced to. But all of these are amazing. I gave each of them 5 stars again. How could I not? It's my favourite series and I will keep coming back to them because I do love them so much. I do also want to mention that I did listen to the audiobooks of these. They are narrated by Sir Ian McKellen, who, if you don't know, plays Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings franchise, and he's just one of my favourite people. And so the fact that he narrates one of my all-time favourite series is so special. I had such an amazing time re-listening to this, and once again I would highly recommend it. Then, as I mentioned, Michelle Paver recently came out with 3 more books in the series, and I pre-ordered each and every single one of these. I've owned them since they came out, but something was holding me back from reading them. That thing was, of course, this series, because this is my all-time favourite series, and having new installments, I wasn't sure how it was going to work because I really loved how this series concluded. I love the journey that our characters went on, and yeah, like I said, I feel like it finished off in a pretty good place. Not to say that there wasn't room for development, because there definitely was, which is why we now have 3 more books in this world, but I was just a bit apprehensive, and I will say I definitely didn't enjoy these as much as I did the first series. Now, that is nothing to do with the way that they're written, because they're pretty much written all the same. The pacing's great, the characters are really interesting. I just felt a little bit disconnected. I feel like if I had read these as soon as I read the first 6 books, I would have really enjoyed these. However, because it's been years since I first read this series and I've been rereading them every year, these didn't hit as hard for me, and so unfortunately I didn't rate them quite as highly. Now, I don't know whether to call these books 1, 2 and 3 or books 7, 8 and 9. I believe that they are books 7, 8 and 9. So book 7 is The Viper's Daughter, book 8 is Skin Taker, and the final book in the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series, which is book 9, is Wolfbane. Now, Viper's Daughter I didn't love quite as much. I wasn't really sure what to expect diving into this one, and whilst I did love it, whilst I loved being back with the characters, as I said, something just wasn't making a whole lot of sense to me. I didn't absolutely love it, and so I did give this one 3 stars. Then I moved on to Skin Taker, which I will say I did enjoy a little bit more. I did still give this one 3 stars as well. I just don't think it blew me away. It obviously progressed the story, but I wasn't on the edge of my seat. I wasn't wanting to read on immediately and find out what was happening. I feel like had I read these physically, it would have hindered my enjoyment even more. I feel like because I listened to the audiobooks, I was a lot more invested, so that definitely did save these first 2. Wolfbane, though, pleasantly surprised me. I actually gave this one 4 stars. I felt like it was a very good conclusion to the series. Again, I feel like you didn't really need it. I feel like all these 3 books we could have done without, but I am glad that we have them because I really did enjoy seeing our characters. I liked seeing where they were at by the end of this book. We of course have some very sad moments, and I did cry during this book, but the way it's resolved I feel like was done very well. I am happy with the way that it resolved as well, and as I said, it wasn't necessary, but I am glad that we have these now. Will I reread them when I reread the first 6 books? I'm not too sure. I probably won't revisit these every single time that I decide to reread that first series, but I am happy to have them. I will reread them as and when I feel like it, but it is just crazy to me now that I read this many books. I have finished a series that I've been putting off for a while, and I'm really happy to have read each and every single one. I would still recommend the last 3, especially if you're reading this series for the first time, but as I said, because I had read the series so many times previously and then dove into the final 3 books, there was a bit of disconnect there for me. However, I did have a good time, and as I said, I would recommend. After after completing so many books in a series, I decided to pick up a book on my Kindle, and that one was The Inmate by Freida McFadden. For those of you who don't know, Freida McFadden is a very popular author right now. She is the author of the Housemaid series. I have read the first book in that series, but I haven't continued on. For some reason I've deviated and read the standalone Freida McFadden books, and I will say I have been having a good time with those. So when I needed a break, when I needed a nice easy read, I did decide to read The Inmate. Now, I didn't actually know anything about this book before diving in. I wanted to go in blind. I just wanted to have a good time with it, essentially. And whilst I didn't absolutely love it, I will say that it did give me what I wanted. I had a good time. It was a fast-paced read and I got through it pretty quickly. In this one, we follow our main character, Brooke, who has recently taken a job as a nurse in a male prison. There are, of course, rules that she must follow. The first one is that she has to treat all prisoners with the same level of respect. The second is to never reveal any personal information, and the third is to never become overly friendly with the inmates. This seems straightforward enough, however, nobody knows that Brooke has already broken these rules because she knows one of the inmates, and that is Shane Nelson, who is one of the most dangerous prisoners. Shane was actually Brooke's boyfriend whilst they were at school, but is spending the rest of his life in prison for a set of gruesome murders that he apparently committed, and the reason that he was actually put into prison was because of Brooke's testimony. So we have a very strange situation here. I honestly don't know why you would put yourself in that situation, but our main character Brooke obviously does. She's trying to keep her personal life separate from her job. However, as the book goes on, you see that that is getting harder and harder for her to do, and it definitely plays with you a bit because you don't actually know what is the truth and what isn't right until the very end. Now, I will say the pacing of this book was definitely good. I was intrigued, it kept me hooked, but unfortunately, as with a lot of thrillers these days, the ending did let it down for me. There were a lot of twists and turns that I feel like weren't really all that necessary. A few definitely shocked me and my opinion definitely changed, which I wasn't expecting it to. However, we then had another reveal that showed you that something wasn't true, and then we had a big event at the end that was a little bit far-fetched in my personal opinion. So I did go ahead and give this one 3 stars. It was exactly what I needed at the time that I picked it up. Could it have been a bit more well developed? Yes. Did I enjoy all the twists and turns? No. Would I recommend it? I feel like if you've read from Freida McFadden before, then yes. However, if this is your first time reading a book by her, I wouldn't say it's her strongest. It definitely is lower down on my list of Freida McFadden books that I've read, but it's more of a popcorn read. I feel like you read it, you have a good time, and then you kind of forget about it. And I don't think it's actually one that is going to stick with me. One that is going to stick with me, however, is The Rebel Witch by Kristen Cicerelli. This is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology. I don't know if it actually has a proper name, but it is also the conclusion because it is a duology, which I honestly love. I used to be the type of reader who loved a long series, and don't get me wrong, I still do. However, reading a duology was so refreshing. I feel like it wrapped up perfectly with this book as well, and I was just so invested from the get-go. Now, for those of you who don't know, the first book is called The Crimson Moth, as I mentioned, or Heartless Hunter if you're in the US, and in that one we follow our main character Ruin, and she is from a family of witches. Her grandmother is a very wealthy aristocrat in the society. However, one day there is an uprising against the witches and they are essentially slaughtered. Rune's grandmother decides that the safest bet for Rune is to actually turn her grandmother in so that she doesn't look like she's sympathizing with the witches, and Rune goes along with this plan. She turns her grandmother in, her grandmother is publicly executed, but the plan worked. Rune was thought to be one of the best assets, I guess, to the witch hunters, and she remained safe in her position in the society. By day, Rune attends all the parties and galas that she needs to in order to keep up this pretense. However, at night, she turns into a vigilante known as the Crimson Moth, and she actually spends her nights trying to free different witches who have been been captured and get them out of the country so that they can start a new life. Recently though, Rune has been finding this more and more difficult. She doesn't quite know when the witches are going to be captured and where they're going to be held, and so she decides that she needs to get close to the captain of the witch hunters, who is called Gideon. Now Gideon is very dangerous because, as I said, he is the kind of leader of the witch hunters. He is one of the main figures of the rebellion against the witches that led to Rune's grandmother being executed, and his sole mission in life is to hunt and kill these witches. The main problem he's facing at the minute though is the Crimson Moth, because she tends to appear at very inconvenient times and obviously rescues the witches, and so Gideon is trying to track her down in order to put an end to it. Something happens to make him think that Rune is the Crimson Moth, and so his plan is to try and get closer to her in order to gain information about the Crimson Moth and whether or not that is Rune. And so they both are trying to get close to each other for different reasons, which of course is just going to end up extremely badly. I don't really want to say too much more than that because I dove into the first book without any real expectations and I loved it. It's one of my new favourite books of all time. I did love this one. I didn't love it as much. If I'm being really particular, this was a 4.5. However, if you do round it up, it is a 5-star. This is such a strong duology. I absolutely loved my time reading it. It's one that I would recommend to everyone. As soon as I finished the first book, I sent a message to my sister and I was like, you need to read this. You will love it. Don't actually know if she's picked it up yet, but I'm going to convince her to because yeah, it's phenomenal. This was such a great conclusion. As I mentioned, the tension in here was insane. The character development as well was just so well done, and you truly do feel all the emotions reading these books. This was insane, but I really do like how it all wrapped up, and as I said, it was really refreshing for a story to be wrapped up in 2 books and for you to have a satisfying conclusion as well. And then the last book I read in April was Cursed Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Webber, which is the second book in the Twin Crown series. Once again, I don't actually know if this series has a particular name, but the first book is Twin Crowns. I read that one a few months ago now, and I have been very slowly making my way through this book. I've actually listened to the audiobook of this one. I listened to it here and there when I got the chance. However, this month I was determined to finish it and I'm very happy that I did. Again, this is the second book in a series, so I can't tell you too much about this one in particular, but in the first book we follow 2 sisters. We have Wren and Rose. They are both princesses. However, unfortunately, the king and queen were murdered on the night of their birth. Wren was actually stolen from her crib by a witch and was taken to be raised by the witches, and Rose was left there in the palace and was raised by the King's Breath, I believe is called, which is the person who stepped into rule until Rose came of age. The King's Breath is called Willem, and he absolutely hates the witches. As was the case with the Crimson Moth, he is trying to get rid of all witches. He thinks that they should all be killed and that magic is something to be feared, and he of course raises Rose to believe this as well, and so they rule their kingdom as one that doesn't like the witches and will do anything to get rid of them. And then of course we have Wren, who was raised by the witches, who knows that they mean no harm and that their magic can be used for good, and she decides that she wants to make Ina, this kingdom, a place where witches can be safe, and decides to kidnap Rose and take her place. Again, I don't really want to say too much more than that. I feel like this is a really interesting series because it's very funny and witty. I really enjoyed the first book. There's a lot of humour in there. I was laughing at certain points throughout. We also of course have 2 female main characters who are very different and have different views and beliefs. However, you see them come to realise that not everything is as they first thought, and you see them develop so much throughout that first book because they are being placed in different situations and are having to listen to other people's views as well, that of course challenge the way that they think and their beliefs as well. We of course have some romance in here. I will say I actually really liked it. Not going to go into too much detail again because I don't want to spoil anything, but it wasn't something that I rolled my eyes at, which is honestly a plus. And of course now I'm up to book 2. We are dealing with something that is very different to what we were dealing with in the first book. However, our characters are once again separated. They are trying to do things by themselves and it's not getting them in the best of situations. And again, that's all I'm going to say there. I don't think I enjoyed this one quite as much as I did the first book. However, the way this ended definitely has me intrigued to read the third and final book. I believe that one is called Burning Crowns. I haven't looked at the synopsis. I haven't started it yet, but I do plan on doing so very soon. I'm just so glad that I finally managed to read the second book because, as I said, I started it quite a while ago. I've slowly been listening to it here and there, and I decided decided this month I was just going to tackle it and finish it, and I'm really glad that I did. I did end up giving this one 3.5 stars, however I did round it up to a 4 on Goodreads. It was enjoyable, I had a good time with it. The beginning was definitely slower, which I think is why it took me so long to actually get into this book. It's pretty chunky. It's a gorgeous book though, and yeah, I feel like I definitely struggled to get into this one for some reason, but as soon as I did, I really enjoyed it. It was a fast-paced book and I did have a good time with it. So there we have it, guys. These are all of the books that I read in April, as well as The Inmate by Frida McFadden. As a whole, it was definitely a good reading month. Of course it was going to be with a few rereads, however the other books that I read definitely surprised me as well, and I feel like I had a pretty good reading month. If you have made it this far through into the video and would like to let me know that you're still here, please go ahead and leave me a crown as the emoji down in the comments. I finished off the month by reading Cursed Crowns. It's a story about 2 queens, so I feel like a crown would be a very fitting emoji to sum up this video. I know I say it all the time, but seeing you guys comment the emoji of the video truly does mean the world to me. It blows me away that you guys watch these all the way through. So if you are still here but don't have anything in particular that you would like to say, please go ahead and comment that now. As well as that, please don't forget to click the like button if you like this video, and the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content from me. But that is it for me today, guys. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you soon in my next video. Goodbye!